You are hot.
Bluffing is not one of Counselor Troy's strong suits. Geordi can see through cards that are transparent to infrared light, and Dr. Toby Russell had the pleasure of reading Dr. Crusher's paper on cybernetic regeneration. That was a long one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 16, Ethics. Story by Sarah B. Cooper, hanging with Mr. Cooper, and Stuart Charno. Teleplay by Ronald D. Moore. Directed by our pal Chip Chalmers. This was leap year, February 29th, 1992. Where were you? How you doing today, Sirach?
29. I'm great. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm good, man. Oh, man. Whenever I get to see a Worf lying in bed and Alexander talking about stuff episode, then you know I'm, boy, am I doing great. So I remember this episode somewhat. I remember seeing it, and I know sometimes I turn into a crybaby and I go like, I don't like procedural courtroom drama episodes. Those are the ones I really, whatever.
yeah, you don't like those.
I'm also not, I don't want to say I'm not a big fan of the Alexander episodes, but I remember there are a couple
episodes.
You did
say that before, though.
I know. And it sounds worse than how I mean it. But, and there's one other episode, I don't remember when it is, it might be in this season, that I just like want to rip my hair out. I haven't seen it in 20 years. Yeah, but if I say one word to Star Trek fans, they know the one I'm talking about, and it drives me bananas. But anyway, wasn't terribly excited that it was this one. But since I haven't seen it in 20 or 30 years, I was like, let's give it a shot and see if we enjoy it. But that was me. You've never seen it. What'd you think of it?
Well, obviously I didn't have that kind of prejudice going into it, so I just took it for what it was. Okay, so my first instinct was, this is Next Generation's version of what happened to Nog on Deep Space Nine, right? This was like, somebody who has some kind of PTSD from life-changing, life-altering injury. And this one went a little bit different, obviously, than the Nog episode, because of Worf's cultural values, because of his Klingon heritage. And I can say that although I have to agree with you to some degree about Alexander and his presence in episodes, it doesn't bring out the most enthusiastic version of me as a spectator, but but having said that, his role in this story did play a crucial function in the storytelling, so I thought it was appropriate, his involvement in this script. I forgot that he was even on the ship. It's funny, he doesn't. He's like, I want to see my dad. And I was
so did Worf.
Yeah, so did Worf.
He's like, what are you doing here? I live with you, Dad.
I'm still here. Exactly. But yeah, I just, so, one thing they handled well in this episode was the cultural differences that a Starfleet crew has, right? You're going to be dealing with different alien races and species, and this infinite diversity when it talks about on a galactic scale, across the cosmos. So now you're dealing with cultures, you're dealing with behaviors, you're dealing with mannerisms, you're dealing with all kinds of stuff that is not of the fabric of Western civilization, which is what we as the spectator are looking through the lens of. We are, looking at Star Trek from the lens of essentially, Western society's view of an advanced civilization. And Starfleet in itself represents those value systems, essentially. right? This democratic ideal, um, free and fair trade, these certain kinds of principles of allowing freedom of religion and freedom of beliefs, First Amendment rights, these kinds of Western philosophies or whatever that come into government structure. I think those are represented in the Federation and what Starfleet is about. And what what they were sensitive to in this episode is that there are other cultural norms that exist, and they are sensitive to allow those norms to go forward as long as they don't interfere with the other laws or norms established by the Federation. So I thought that was one of the most interesting aspects of this, how adamant Picard was for sticking up for Worf's right to suicide himself.
Yeah. And for the record, I didn't hate this episode. That's one of the good things about watching an episode 30 years later. It's like kid Ryan might not have liked something, but adult Ryan's like, what? For example, Deep Space Nine, turns out my favorite episode is Explorers. I don't remember watching it as a kid. It didn't affect me at all. But watching it now as an adult, I was like, what a freaking great episode. Take Me Out to the Holosuite's amazing. I kind of like those bottle episodes, but bringing it back to this one, I did think that was really cool. However, what I found most interesting was how differently it played out than I expected. First of all, Picard is usually the guy that would be like, I cannot justify death on my ship. You know what I mean? Like, he's usually that guy. And then Worf is usually the kind of guy that goes, but there's nothing more honorable than, or whatever, whatever he's going to say. But in this case, Picard was kind of advocating for Worf against Riker, which is, I felt like it was very counter to how we've seen his character in the past. Not that it wasn't believable, it just wasn't what I expected. Especially the way he was so adamant about it. Usually he's the one toiling with this moral dilemma rather than taking a side on the moral dilemma for someone else. And Riker was the one toiling with this moral dilemma, which was cool. But he was so sure about it. Like, he wasn't just like, well, I do like Worf and I really want to respect it. He was just like, no, that's gross. Fuck that. What are you talking about? This is stupid. Like, he was just so like,
yeah.
I loved how like simple he was about it. He's like, it's a no, bro. I don't know. And he was like insulting him on practically his deathbed. He's like, zero decorum, zero sensitivity. He was just like, what? No, gross. And I can see your toes. Barf. He was just totally rude about it. So that was one thing. And the other thing I thought of, and I'd love to know your opinion on this, is it immediately flashed me back to a similar Deep Space Nine episode when Worf's brother wants to commit suicide and wants Worf to assist him in doing it. And in this time, Worf was saying, I'm going to kill my brother. And Sisko was like,
hell no.
He was like, Riker,
He's like, no, we don't respect that custom. Well, I'm not going to honor that custom.
Right. And
which is the exact opposite of Picard in this episode. So yeah, I thought the same thing about that episode, the DS9, where he wanted to kill his brother and Sisko was like not on board with it. And that's what I'm saying. There's like this line between what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, culturally, to essentially integrate into this other multicultural society, because there is a level of acquiescence when it comes to integrating into a multicultural society. If you are in a homogenous single culture society, then yes, there are certain norms that everybody accepts and does. For example, could be cannibalism, let's say. There are indigenous tribes around the world that have practiced in cannibalism. And that may be the norm amongst an isolated group, with no, authority or governing body that kind of has authority in that region, wherever that is. That could be the norm there. But once that person leaves that environment and now joins into a multicultural environment where they're not the only person of a culture, there's other cultures that have to be integrated. There's certain level of things you're going to have to adapt to and let go of. You can't. We're not going to allow you to practice cannibalism, for example, in this society. And so I think there's that's where the line is. Where what is acceptable, what is not. And I think this brings the question up about these kinds of multi ethnic, multi species, integrated societies, and how we find ways to accept people's belief systems, but not allow certain belief systems that uh, trample over the rights that we've established as normative and accepted. Then there's the balance there, and there's always a push and pull thing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation that we still have to this day. And what's really cool about Star Trek is that they could bring up that same theme, and we've spoken about this same theme 4, 5, 6, 7 times, yet they have a different take on it every time. And that's what's really interesting about it. They kind of hit it from a different angle or try it in a different way.
And there is a distinction between this one, by the way.
Oh, let's hear it.
The distinction would be if it was being presented in a legal case, in front of some judges. The distinction between the two incidents between Sisko and Picard would be suicide versus murder. And in this case, this is an assisted suicide, which would be like the Jack Kevorkian assisted suicide cases that have been brought forth. And that legality would have to be argued whether somebody is entitled to the right to have an assisted suicide. And then the other argument, which is the killing your brother argument, is almost an acceptable murder, and that's a whole different legal jurisdiction, essentially.
Yeah, but didn't he want Riker to basically kill him? Wasn't that what it? I mean, I don't know what.
I think he wanted Riker to
hold his hair while he did it.
I'm not sure.
Hold my hair back.
Was it just bring me the knife?
I think.
I thought he was just had to bring him the knife.
Well, here's the thing. If we'll remember correct, if we remember in Deep Space Nine, Kurn, great nectar, by the way, Kurn.
Played by the legendary late great Tony Todd.
Yeah. So he wanted Worf to do the thing where I think Worf stabs him, right? So if this is that same ritual suicide, then Worf was asking Riker to stab him, and Riker came up with a great loophole where he's like, boy, I was gonna do it, but you got to ask this little kid to do it instead. You got to ask your son. And Worf's like, I have no son. He's like, no, he's right over there. He's like, oh, shit, you're right. I keep forgetting. Do I like him? Not really, but he's cool. You should be nice to him. He's your son. He's like, well, I don't really want to ask him to kill me because what if he misses? He's a quarter human, so he probably has bad aim.
Yeah.
I don't know. They didn't really cover what that entailed,
I mean, as bad as I really, I'm not that interested in seeing the Alexander storyline, because I don't think it doesn't serve Worf well, in my opinion, this particular storyline. It doesn't make him look, like you said, what son? He's right there, Worf.
I was just picturing Worf and Alexander substituted in for the Explorers episode on Deep Space Nine. Worf, when they're fixing up a hammock. Look, Dad, I'm making a hammock. And he's not
gonna work. I don't think so. I just felt bad for Alexander. I mean, what a tough life this kid had. He gets, he watches his mother. He sees his mother's dead body. You know what I mean? And basically, Worf forces him to like take a hard look at that.
Yeah, Worf rubs his nose in it like he did it, like he is a dog or something.
Yeah, I was like, look at this, look at this. Look what you did. Uh, but so there's that, and then he's traumatized because he's raised by his elderly grandparents who are basically like, look, we don't want this kid anymore, or we can't deal with him anymore because we were too old to deal with this kid. So here he is being, he lost his mother. His grandparents are basically like dropping him off like luggage on Worf's doorstep, and Worf sees him once every 17 episodes.
Yeah.
like if that, like once every 2 seasons.
Well, Sirach, have I got news for you?
Oh God,
You're going to be seeing a lot more Alexander. Oh boy, it's going to start being like one every 3 episodes. I cannot wait. There's going to be a mud bath with the naked Troys and Loxana Troy. He's going to be in there. It's going to be.
Yeah,
You think I'm joking?
I'm with you. I'm not the biggest on the Alexander episodes. Even though, not to knock the kid, I thought he did a pretty good job this episode as far as his performance.
That's great.
He's a great kid, and it's just the storyline itself is what I'm not the biggest fan of. But yeah, I guess you're right. There is if Worf was assisting his brother in suicide, then it would be essentially the same argument. And clearly Sisko's like, no, we don't. I don't accept that. We're not. I'm not letting you do that.
Mm.
And Picard is like, oh well, he has the right to do it. Go ahead and kill him, Riker.
Yeah, as long as you're doing it, he's like, hey, my name's Paul, and this between y'all, okay?
Yeah. And I thought it was weird because I thought Picard should have been in Worf's bedside at some point. If I'm one of the main guys on the bridge, and I get into a life altering accident where you're essentially going to be a paraplegic, and the captain doesn't like come over to like walk down to the sick bay to just say, hey, I heard about what happened. You're all right. What's going on? How do you feel? Riker did it, which was great, but I feel like it's the duty of the captain to do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that would have been a great moment for Worf to open up to the captain about his insecurities.
Right. Looking at the script, there were a couple scenes that were cut out. One where Picard came and was just asking Worf for like his passwords and his passcodes to get into stuff. And he's like, I'm sure we totally know you're going to survive, bro. But just in case, is that uppercase or lowercase? The first letter. We just need to get it. We want to make sure because Tasha had the other copy of the passwords. So
yeah, Worf Daddy 23 at what?
Yeah. No, but that's a good point. Like there was no Picard checking on him. I mean, of course they could just say, "Oh yeah, he checked on him when at a different time." Troy was cool. She was featured well. Wait a minute, my background. I need to fix my background.
Oh yeah,
I thought I got it, but I guess I re-uploaded last week's. Anyway, but it was nice when Picard and Riker were having their meeting, and they were clearly showing concern when they're just kind of like going through the motions in their meeting. They're like, "Oh, what's this? Oh, it's just that much," and it's this. But they're clearly thinking about Worf, and I thought that was really cute. That was cool.
And that was good. I did like it. I thought this episode in general had some good storylines in it. I don't know. I just wish I could have seen more vulnerability from Worf. I think that's one thing that Aaron Eisenberg deserves an amazing amount of credit for on his performance. Because when he was, when he had the opportunity to kind of stand on the stage and deliver his performance, it was super emotional, super vulnerable, and it really, spoke to how he felt. And I think Worf's tough exterior, maybe a bravado didn't allow him the moment where he could have really grabbed my attention performance wise, and maybe, showed just a little bit of vulnerability as a Klingon, a little sign of weakness, that would have played well for me, instead of, oh, well, this is what we do as Klingons and I have to kill myself. And it would have been more like, I don't know if I have any worth, I feel less of a man, like more, more personal things that maybe like brings a tear to his eye where he's about to cry and he's like, I cannot cry. I am not crying,
It is dusty in here. Yeah, I've got some things to add to that. I think that's a very good point, Rock. We're going to take a super quick break, everybody, and then we're going to dive back into this conversation piece known as ethics. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule.